Environment Policy Committee, myself being chair, and Senator Root is also present here. At this point, I guess I'll try and run the meeting as best I can, but we're going to start out right away, understanding that there's no votes being taken, there's no bill here, and we're going to have only one testifier from the Center for American Experiment besides yourself, Commissioner, and I understand you have a couple of backups if you need be. So why don't you go ahead, and we're talking about of course, the California car emissions bill. And where that is. And yes, I know you're going to say that we've met on this before, but it's been a long time ago. And now all of a sudden, kind of the way things go, as you know, it's now starting to get a lot of interest here. So if you would just go ahead and start out as to how it's come about and where you're at, and we'll try and get through it here as quick as we can.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner. Mr. Elferts, do we have a quorum?
Yes, I believe we do.
Okay, so I'll let the record reflect that we have a quorum. Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Oh, that's fine. That's good. That's good. My apologies here. These Zoom things are really quite interesting, to say the best. You know what? We're all getting used to it, though. It's starting to come together. Go ahead, Commissioner. Sorry.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. And thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. I know this is a joint committee, so nice to see so many faces. And I know you have a number of new members as well, at least a couple new members on the policy committee. So welcome to the new members, and I look forward to continuing to work with you all. So I'm Commissioner Laura Bishop with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. With me today, I have Craig McDonald, who is our Assistant Commissioner for Air and Policy and Climate Policy. Also Frank Polash, who is our Director of Climate, and Greta Gauthier, who's our Assistant Commissioner for Legislative Affairs. So certainly I want to walk through the clean cars. I understand that you have a lot of questions, and that's why we wanted to make certain that we made ourselves available and in this forum. So I have a few slides, and I know they were shared with you before the meeting, but I will try to pull them up quickly if I can. And this allows us to maybe go through a little bit quicker, but also to answer any questions that you might have.
Sure,
so I know that Senator Ingebrigtsen brought up the fact that we have some limited time, and we do because tonight is one of our public information session meetings that is scheduled for 5 o'clock. And I know initially this was to be scheduled earlier in the day, this hearing, and we moved it to this time. So we're kind of crunched with our staff that has to be dedicated to that. But after this presentation and answering your questions, I'm going to have to switch over to our public information session as well. So the two things with this standard that I just want you to refresh your memory on is the motor vehicle emission standards. There's two standards that Clean Cars rulemaking addresses, and that is our low emissions vehicle standard and the zero emissions vehicle standards. The goal for this rulemaking is relatively simple. It's if Minnesota is going to meet or exceed our statutory goals for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, we must take action to reduce our emissions from the transportation sector. So that's what this rulemaking and the goal is. These proposed standards, as you see here, that we'll talk about, work together to ensure that Minnesotans have access to these newer vehicles and cleanest models available, and more options for these vehicles. So it's really twofold. It's to address air quality and climate and to provide choice for Minnesotans. these standards, and we'll go into kind of the states that have adopted these standards, but they've been adopted by a number of states, including Colorado, Maine, Washington, as well as others, so about 14 states. So we've seen them in action, and our rulemaking and the statement of need and reasonableness really looked at these other states. So we know that the standards work, that vehicle manufacturers can comply with them successfully, and that we have a community of states to learn from that includes cold weather climates and rural communities. So we'll go into the different standards. The LEV standard, the low emissions vehicle standard, sets limits for tailpipe pollution for auto manufacturers, meaning it regulates the amount of greenhouse gases and other harmful air pollution that new vehicles can emit. This standard is not new. The auto industry has been successfully meeting this standard since 2012. The LEV certified vehicles are already what's for sale here in Minnesota. In fact, because the federal standards and the LEV standard are the same from 2012 to 2020, all new vehicles sold over the last 8 years have been LEV certified. So this is not new. The situation changed though in 2020. And so when proposed changes to the existing federal standard were finalized, those changes were made made the federal standard weaker. So it offers less protection for our environment and human health and would make it harder for Minnesota to meet its goals for reducing greenhouse gas emissions reductions.
This would have been under the Trump administration then, right?
That was in the previous, the Trump administration.
Yep, all right.
And I know, and we'll go through and answer questions about, if the future administration, or I guess today, the new administration and what they're looking at. So for what we see is, the clean car standards offer a better alternative for Minnesota, and adopting the LEV standard now would preserve access to cleaner, more efficient LEV certified vehicles. So for zero emissions vehicles, these are our electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids. And so that standard works differently. It requires auto manufacturers to deliver more zero emissions vehicles for sale in Minnesota, increasing their availability and consumer choice. Here we're talking about those battery electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid models, and the exact number of vehicles that manufacturers are required really is linked to the automakers' overall sales within the state. The ZEV standard calls for incremental progress over time, not a sudden overnight change. Right now, there are simply more makes and models available in states that have the ZEV standard than we can easily acquire here in Minnesota. So 2 examples we hear a lot about are the hybrid, Subaru hybrid Crosstrek, especially with SUVs, and that, Minnesotans like their SUVs and their trucks, and we understand that. And so 2 examples of plug-in hybrid models, the Subaru Crosstrek and the Kia Niro, are ones that we have heard a lot about people having trouble receiving. So automakers, we know, are investing billions of dollars to help develop this technology. And there are many new electric models coming down the pike, including all electric SUVs, crossovers, trucks. We see those from Rivian, we see them from Ford and Chevrolet, among others. In the past, we've been on the tail end of receiving these new makes and models, but we want to ensure that Minnesota is on the front end of this new innovation. And there's a potential knockoff effect as well. So more new EVs on the market here could lead to more used EVs becoming available for secondary markets. To reiterate a few of the facts, because we hear a lot of different things about this that just aren't true, but some of the facts. This does not, this applies to new and light medium duty vehicles for sale in Minnesota for model year 2025 and beyond. It's not going to start immediately. I think that's the piece that we would want to emphasize. It does not apply to off-road or farming equipment or heavy-duty trucks. It doesn't apply to used or existing vehicles. It does not require emissions testing, and it doesn't require anyone to purchase an electric vehicle. And it does not eliminate our SUVs or pickup trucks. So what we can say on that too is, we've looked at those traditional possible impacts to our traditional vehicle availability as well, because that does not eliminate the SUVs or pickup truck. People are worried, what happens, right? Does this mean that I'll have less availability or less to choose from? And when we looked at the states that have adopted clean car standards, the most popular vehicle in those states and the most popular model vehicle is still an SUV or pickup truck. This indicates that the availability of traditional trucks and SUVs has not been negatively affected by automakers delivering more EVs for sale. And consumers in these ZEV states continue to have access to all types of vehicles. Here are the states that have adopted the LEV standard, and most of them, but not all, have adopted the ZEV standard. You see the two different columns. So they include California, and I know that's how you've referenced this hearing as California standards, but it's beyond California. California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Maine, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Vermont, Washington, and the District of Columbia. In addition, to Minnesota right now, who's working to adopt these standards. Nevada and New Mexico are also in that process of working to adopt these standards. While some states were directed by the governor to do this and to undergo a rulemaking, others were directed by the state legislature to do the rulemaking, but all of the states have adopted the clean car standards have done so through a rulemaking process.
Commissioner, before I forget, do you know where the cut is there? Do you know how many were actually done by governor rule versus the legislature?
Yeah, we have a chart with that, almost at what, and maybe the staff can pull up the chart. I'm not sure if I have it in my notes, but most of them were done through executive order.
Okay, and just get that to us is all, and then go ahead.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we've got the chart all broken down of how that breaks down. I know that's an important point, and that's why I brought it up. So, and what we have here is, those states that have done this, and this doesn't include Minnesota, New Mexico, or Nevada that are proposing this, but that represents about 36% of the new vehicle sales market, just with those states. So it's a pretty significant states that have done this and a pretty big part of the market.
Commissioner, am I to understand, Commissioner, that Colorado has adopted but not implemented?
Right.
And they are the newest state. They're the newer of the states. The other ones have been many years ago that they did that, maybe 10 years ago.
Sure.
So Colorado is the first new one, and they have implemented, or they have adopted but not implemented. Yeah. Is that my understanding?
So, Madam Chair, that's right about Colorado, and we'll get into that with the timeline because, it's a really important point. From the time that you adopt to implementation, there is a mandatory 2-year waiting period, and that allows for the manufacturers to really work to be able to get these vehicles to the states. And there's also a credit system that goes along with that we've looked at as part of our rule, where early action credits, where if people are selling them for example, now these EVs, that there would be some credits that could be applied into the system. So here's some results that we based some of our analysis on. So we've seen this chart before, but this really gets at the transportation emissions. So the green line is the Next Generation Energy Act goals that have been set in statute in 2007. And you see, you know, the idea is to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions in the state. The trajectory is the blue line right now. So the state did not meet the greenhouse gas goals in 2015, and we are not on track to meet any future goals. The blue line just shows that our greenhouse gases continue to go up in the wrong direction. And we know that transportation is the largest contributor to these. So that is what we've looked at here, and we know that business as usual just isn't going to continue to keep the state competitive, but also to achieve the goals that we're looking at with reducing our greenhouse gas emissions and providing these options to Minnesotans. Here shows kind of that cumulative of what the rulemaking and the two new standards really would do in reductions of greenhouse gas emissions. As you can see, it's a 8.4 million tons reduced in those first 10 years. And it goes out to 2034. Right now, as we looked at that with the 8.4 million tons. And that primary goal really is to reduce these greenhouse gas emissions. This is in those first 10 years from implementation. We start at 2025 on purpose. MPCA uses the well-to-wheel emissions calculations to make sure we're capturing the fullest picture of emissions and potential benefits. This means that our analysis includes emissions from vehicle tailpipes as well as emissions from power plants that are used to generate electricity to power the vehicles and fuel extraction, transportation, and processing. So it's kind of that full, more holistic look. MPCA's analysis estimates that Clean Cars Minnesota rule would reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, as we said, by 8.4 million tons. So we see a bigger and bigger benefit over time, again, and that is really because as we have more of these vehicles in the market and people are transitioning out of their older vehicles, we see that build up over time. Consumer choice is a big driving factor here, and we looked at this to understand what it means currently for Minnesotans. MPCA's analysis showed that electric vehicles make up less than 0.3% of new vehicles on the lot for sale in Greater Minnesota, and less than 1% of new vehicles for sale in the Twin Cities metro. That's not a lot of choices for consumers to consider when shopping for a new vehicle. Meanwhile, MPCA's analysis shows that dealers in cold weather ZEV states, those that have adopted these standards, states like Vermont, New York, and Connecticut, are carrying a higher number of EVs in these comparable size communities, more like the 1 to 3% of available vehicles for sale. The numbers here are still not large, but they do indicate that ZEV states with similar climates are carrying a higher percentage of EVs on their lots, including in smaller rural communities. Third is our analysis demonstrates that the proposed rule would protect human health by reducing community exposure to harmful air pollution from vehicles. In the first 10 years, MPCA estimates that the Clean Cars rule would reduce more than 6,000 tons of non-methane organic gases and nitrogen oxides, and over 3,000 tons of particle pollution. MPCA estimates that the Clean Cars rule could prevent hundreds of premature deaths from the respiratory and cardiovascular health effects of air pollution in those first 10 years of implementation. This is an important piece of the timeline, and we've shared this one before, so I want to really look at it pretty closely with you. The earliest possible date, and where that arrow I think is, that the proposed rule could go into effect is January 2024. Or in terms of model years, that would be model year 2025. This is because the Federal Clean Air Act requires a 2-year waiting period between adoption and implementation of the standards. That means there's considerable time built into this for automakers to plan and prepare for the standards to go into, should they go into effect. And the timeline, though, is dependent on a number of factors, including the proposed rule must be approved by an administrative law judge. California's waiver, and we'll talk a little bit about that, and has to be restored, and the agency must complete the rulemaking in 2021. If all these conditions are met, then the new rule would affect new vehicles for sale starting with model year 2025, approximately January of 2024. And this shows a little bit of how to participate in the rulemaking process. I think that's an important piece of this, because I know you'll have questions for me, and I want to touch on and encourage the questions, but also that anyone who's interested in this rule can provide written comments to the ALJ or testify in person at the hearing. And for information on how to comment on the rulemaking can be found on our website, of course. But please note that written comments must be submitted directly to the ALJ and not the MPCA. You know, our public information sessions in advance of the hearing are in advance of the hearing by the administrative law judge, where they will be hearing this on February 22nd and February 23rd. And since we're in the middle of that public comment period, makes it hard for me to, in fact, I'm not able to answer hypothetical questions, but I'm happy to discuss, obviously, the contents of MPCA's analysis in the statement of need and reasonableness, and mention that MPCA can't comment either on any pending litigation to the Clean Car rulemaking.
Hey, Commissioner.
So with that, I'd be happy to open it to questions.
Yeah, I'd like to start out if I can and go from there. I'll look at the hands as they come up here.
Sure.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I'll stop this year.
I'm understanding that you know, unlike today, where actually your hearings is not allowing any testimony. It has to be written testimony. Is that right? And why not in-person testimony? We don't quite understand that.
You know, I'll let Frank or Craig maybe walk through the process with the administrative law judge and how that works. Because I mean, it's as the process and the procedures as dictated by their process.
Okay, so I guess my question, maybe we have to back up a little bit. During these public meetings, you've allowed personal testimony then?
So when we did the initial meetings, we allowed for people to provide comments, and I don't know, I don't think you were at the one that we had up there in Fergus Falls area, but which was probably the closest one to you. But yes, we allowed for questions and comments, and then we allowed for an open comment period as well. Craig, do you want to say anything more on that?
Happy to, Commissioner. Mr. Chair, for the record, my name is Craig McDonald, Assistant Commissioner for Air and Climate Policy. And to your question, the public information sessions that we held previously with the request for comment were open sessions where we invited in folks to comment and to provide us feedback. And we also held technical stakeholder meetings as well for feedback on that. Those helped inform the contents of the rule and some of our policy decisions there. And in December, we published, as you know, the notice of intent to adopt with a hearing. And as part of that, we're holding 4 public information sessions. And these are the virtual sessions that the commissioner mentioned, that one starts in just a few minutes even. And at those sessions, we are accepting written comments, or excuse me, not comments, questions. And we're addressing those questions, but they need to be based in the things that we can answer. And that's our analysis on the sonar. And our TSD. So we are allowing folks the opportunity to ask us questions, but we want to just answer those questions. And the goal of that, right, is to provide clarity so folks can comment on the rule itself, because comments do need to go through to the administrative law judge. And we will respond to those comments on the records. That's part of the Administrative Procedures Act.
Hey, are you going to hang around for a little bit, or are you going to go with the commissioner?
We'll hang around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Commissioner,
hang
I'm
around.
going to give the other senators a chance to talk to you here. I'm assuming they got questions for you. So
Sure, and I can go over a little bit.
We'll start out with Senator Root.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Commissioner, you know, we've had this conversation almost 1.5 years now, where you made a commitment to me and my constituents in Greater Minnesota to bring the message out, and it's never been done in 1.5 years. And I can't tell you how disappointed I am that, you know, in Greater Minnesota, the message has never come. And, you know, we'll leave it at that, because you and I have had that discussion for 1.5 years now. But that being it made, I would like to talk about the batteries, because that's a really big concern for me. You know, the cars, you talk about, well, the climate is the same in Vermont and it's cold there, but Vermont is 9,600 square miles big, and we're 87,000 miles big. And so the Chevy Volt gets what, 250, 260 mileage on a charge. Mm-hmm. And when it gets cold, the battery life goes down by 40%. So I'm pretty sure I'm not making it to the Capitol in an electric car. And so when we talk about electric cars in Greater Minnesota, they're really challenging. We don't have anything to charge them with, and the batteries don't last when you put the heater on. And so it's really a concern to push electric cars in Greater Minnesota in a state this big. And my other concern about the batteries is, do we have a plan? The batteries in Greater Minnesota will not last as long as they will in other states, because they'll be constantly drained because of the cold weather. We have, let's see, California has 18 days below freezing. We have 153 days below freezing. So we have a little different climate then. But my concern is, what is the plan for the batteries when they have to be replaced? I think on average, we are at what, 4 to 5 years at max on a battery. And so what's the plan? You and I work a lot on landfill issues and what goes into the landfill and what gets recycled. And is there a plan going forward for all these batteries that we're going to have? I hate to create that problem without having a solution up front. Thank you.
So, Senator, thank you. I do want to first address your concern over that no public hearing was held in the Brainerd area. And I know that that is something we had intended to do before the pandemic hit. We said we would come to your community, but unfortunately, the COVID pandemic has not allowed us to do those in-person public meetings that we had intended to do. So that's why we're trying to do more of these public information sessions as best as we can virtually. So that had been my intention, as you know. You're right on the range concerns, but I think what the important piece of this rulemaking is that nobody's mandating or pushing that anyone buy an electric vehicle. So there is a infrastructure that is out there in Minnesota and is being built, but nobody is, there are no requirements to buy one of these electric vehicles. So there is a phase-in piece for the manufacturers to be able to provide them into the state. And there's no requirement that a certain amount have to be sold in greater Minnesota either. The manufacturers can meet their requirements wherever they want to distribute these within the state. So as far as the battery replacement, you're right. I mean, I worked on electronics recycling and set up the program for Best Buy and worked on that legislation here in Minnesota and helped develop it. So I know that electronics recycling and especially battery recycling is something that we do have to think about. I think the piece that we have here is that we always have to figure out how to dispose of cars at their end of life as well. There's a lot less maintenance on these electric vehicles than there are on other cars over time as well. So, but finding a safe disposal for batteries is something that I know the industry is kind of on the forefront, and also extending life of the batteries. So I would expect that we'll see a lot more innovation going into that in the future about both the life of the batteries as well as our recycling of batteries.
And thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that. You know, this comes from the senator that had thousands and thousands of VW diesel cars parked in her district for years. So I think going forward, it would be really nice to have a plan going forward so we don't end up with, you know, something like that.
Yeah, right. I think we're going to need to look at that issue regardless of this rule, because we see the popularity of this increasing. So I look forward to working with you to develop a solution.
Senator Torres Ray.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, I am intrigued by kind of the Car Dealers Association opposition to this. I had as you know, we had a meeting in the Energy Committee, and Senator Sanders. And what was interesting was that in the energy industry, they are ready. You know, they want to put the charging stations. They feel it's tremendous business. It's exciting. You know, everybody's talking about this. Consumers want it. Everybody wants it. And what I understood was that, you know, some of the car dealer, the businesses were hesitant about the time frame because they thought it was going to happen right away, and they were not going to be able to acquire inventory. It seems that, you know, if this is going to happen in 2005, there is a time frame that will really help them, you know, get to where they need to be in terms of inventory. And if we don't do this, they will be left behind. And so Minnesota will not be in a competitive way because people want these cars and they're going to go out and buy these cars someplace else. So could you share with us, you know, how can we work this out? Is it, you know, I'm just intrigued by finding a solution, because I think that if we don't put the state in a place where we can compete and have these cars and move forward, we are really not going to be able to compete with other states. Could you tell us what is the wisdom telling us as legislators? How do we position ourselves? How do we create this energy in, you know, with the dealers associations and just really be in a good place as a state?
Commissioner Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator Torres Ray. I can tell you we've met with the dealers a number of times to try to really understand, but also to understand concerns, but also to we met with manufacturers to also understand where they're going. I mean, these vehicles are coming into the marketplace. They are not coming to Minnesota right now. And I can tell you because that both in talking to other states, but also other countries where they have put in requirements. And in fact, you know, in Europe, in the UK right now, there's over 400 models that will be available in 2025 that are the zero emissions. So there's more models that are coming in states that have done these regulations, and that's part of what we're considering here for Minnesota. We have 40 different models that meet that ZEV requirement that are on the market right now, but they're just not available here in Minnesota. So we're trying to really look at ways to get more of these vehicles and that choice, and for Minnesotans right here in Minnesota, so that we're not having to go to, a friend that goes to New Jersey to buy her car and drive it back here. We'd like to have them for sale right here in Minnesota.
So we're going to move along to Senator Weber, because I know you're up against the clock here. Senator Weber.
Hi, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hi, Commissioner. Let's continue to talk about competition. Basically, in your own statement of need and reasonableness, you estimated that the standards will increase the cost of every vehicle in Minnesota by $1,139. Now, I represent a border district, and my dealers tell me that 20 to 40% of their business comes from across the state line. So automatically, you have placed them at a competitive disadvantage when every vehicle on their lot has to be raised by that estimated amount. And you've been in private business. Do you really believe, Commissioner, that it's fair for the government to institute that kind of a price increase on a private business? Quite frankly, from what I understand, sometimes there's not even $1,100 margin in some of these vehicles. So how do you justify that?
Mm-hmm. So, Mr. Chair, Senator Weber, thank you for the question. I'm going to turn to the staff on those figures because, over the life of time of the car, that would not be, should not be an issue. And again, too, we're looking at the LEV standard as well, where it would make it's also based on assumption that those other states aren't adopting and are going with the 2020 regulation, which rolled back those LEV standards. And so that's part of that price differential. But Frank, do you want to talk a little bit about the price piece, or Craig, and the price difference?
Sure. Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, my name is Frank Kolash, Climate Director with the Pollution Control Agency. And you are correct, Senator Weber, in our statement of need and reasonableness, we did show that there is an increase on the order of what you were speaking about for the low emission vehicles, or vehicles that are certified to that low emission vehicle emission standard. What we also know, and we have talked with other states that have put these standards into place, is that the dealers can also sell non-low emission vehicle standard vehicles to people that live out of state. But if they're going to sell to a Minnesotan, it needs to be a low emission vehicle. But then what we do find was, when we even considering that upfront increased cost, that over the first 5 years and the lifetime ownership of the vehicle, there's a savings to the vehicle owner, because that vehicle is a more efficient vehicle and saves them money at the pump. So what we're seeing is that over the first 5 years and the lifetime of that vehicle, the consumers end up saving money because of the low emission vehicle standards.
Mr. Chairman?
Sure, follow up.
Yes, but it's my understanding that there's going to be an increase in cost of every vehicle that is sold in Minnesota, not just the no emission vehicles that are sold. And at the end of the day, what kind of a gas price were you computing as far as basing that savings on?
Frank, do you want to
Frank,
do
go ahead.
that analysis? Otherwise, that's something maybe that goes to the ALJ, if that's as well, if there's a question specific to the data.
Frank, can you answer that, Frank, or not?
Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, I would need to look that up and make sure I pull the correct number out of the technical support document so that I am accurate in the answer that I give to you. So what I want to do is work with Greta and get that exact number back to you, because I don't want to give you an incorrect number, and it would take me a few minutes to look through our technical support document to give you the exact number, the exact dollar on price per gallon that we used in our analysis. And again, I don't want to give you an incorrect number right here, and I would just have to take a few minutes to find that.
Okay, very good. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Greta, we look forward to that, Greta. I'm going to go next to David Tomasoni, and then one other question, then we're going to go on to our next presenter.
Thank you.
Senator Tomasoni.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner. So what I'm trying to figure out is if there's no requirement to buy, why don't we just let demand run the market? And because I don't see people going out to New Jersey to buy an electric car. They might go to the dealer and say, I want an electric car. And the dealer says, let me get one from you. I'm gonna get one for you. And then we find out if there really is a demand. That's my number one thing. But the second thing I'm a little confused about is if I'm understanding the way this works, the federal law governs all the states. And right now, the federal law does not allow California emission standards to be in effect. So if that's the case, number one, why are we in a hurry to do this? Because I know there's a lawsuit that California wants to reinstate their standards. And why wouldn't we wait to see what the results of the lawsuit are? And number two, why don't we wait and see what the Biden administration does?
Good questions. Commissioner, do you have some answers for that?
Mr. Chair and Senator Tomasoni. So first of all, on the demand piece, unfortunately, it's just not that easy to go to a dealer and request an electric car and have them get it into the state. And when, you know, even my personal experience on that was, no, there's only so many of those cars that are made and they're sent to the ZEV states. So this is, you know, really looking at ways to bring in more cars to Minnesota, and that there's that lag time for the implementation to allow for the manufacturers to gear up for that time period. Second, you asked about the federal law. Right now, yes, the Trump administration did move to revoke California's waiver. That did not stop states from being able to move ahead with the rulemaking process. And so that is something that, you know, we're looking at. It is being litigated on California's waiver and the standard, but it is something that, you know, we've looked at from knowing where the greenhouse gas emissions are in the state and where we're not on track and where we need to go. Building this in, we've made clear from the beginning that if that waiver is not reinstated, that this would not be going forward. But the state of Minnesota has also challenged that decision to revoke California's waiver. So, you know, we are in litigation on that as well.
Mr. Chair, that's my point, Commissioner, is that if the standard is not reinstated, number one, then your rulemaking is a waste of time.
We believe it will be reinstated.
Well, and number two, you have a federal government that's probably going to go back to the previous standard, but you might want to wait and see. And number three, how do you know if the rule is reinstated if California doesn't change their rules in a way that we have no idea what it's going to be? Yeah. Then now we're subject to whatever California rules.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that, Mr. Chair and Senator Tomasoni. So again, we believe it will be reinstated, or that the court would hold that up. So we have been looking at with that in mind, if the LEV standard goes back and that's rolled back from what the Trump administration put into place, it does not address the zero emissions and ZEV standard. And so that, you know, piece is what we're looking at as well in the state of Minnesota that would bring more electric vehicles. I think we'd all agree that, you know, we don't want to see the current cars that are sold in the state right now to, you know, and that will be sold in the future to be more polluting. And maybe we don't all agree, but I would think that would be, and something that we could agree on, that we want to find ways to reduce pollution. And so I'm hopeful that the LEV piece would stay, but the Biden administration has not, and the Trump rule did not look at the ZEV piece. I mean, that's still up for the states to put in place. As for California, if California does change their standard, yes, we would need to do a rulemaking that changes our standard if that was what we chose to do.
Well,
But we're not going to, just because California changes their standard, that we change ours.
so Commissioner, if California changes their standard, then who's in charge of changing Minnesota's standard, the MPCA or the legislature?
Well, again, it would be the legislature could do something, but we'd have the choice either to go back to the federal standard or to go through another, open rulemaking to go to those standards, to the state standards, which are the 14 others.
Once again, I think we're jumping the gun. I don't think we need to do this until we find out what happens in court. And I don't think we need to do this until we find out what the Biden administration does. And I'm not sure why we're in a hurry to do this. And it just seems to me we could end up with a whole bunch of electric cars on lots. And like to Senator Root's point, that people in rural Minnesota might not want to buy them. And there's these electric cars on the lots, and who pays for those if they can't sell them? I think there's lots of questions to be asked about this.
On that same point, Commissioner, I'd like to really quickly here before I go to the next question.
Yeah, and I need
you brought up an interesting point here. The half of the legislatures and maybe more or less that have already adopted these standards were either by governor rule or by legislature. Let's back up all the way to the beginning. Did Governor Walz's administration come to myself or anybody in leadership, either on the DFL side or the Republican side of the environment committees or energy committees, and ask if the legislature could participate at all in this? Or how did that come about? Because I don't remember the administration asking me if I would participate.
Mm-hmm. So, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, this was part of the governor's, initial climate agenda and discussion that he'd had, I know, with cabinet and with others about his climate agenda. But I don't think he came to you to ask about legislative authority to do this.
No, he didn't. And I just wanted to make that very clear. I don't think anybody, at least as far as I know, in our caucus was asked of that. I could check with leadership. In order to move on with the rule, it would seem that you've exhausted every other means legislatively, but that was not the case with this administration. So I'm going to go to Jen. Jen, do you have a question?
Senator?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I do. I just wanted to, first of all, thank you, Commissioner Bishop.
Identify yourself, please. Thanks.
Absolutely. I'm Senator Jen McEwen. I represent Senate District 7 out of Duluth.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And I really just wanted to thank you so much, Commissioner Bishop, and your team, and all of the hard work that has gone into this. It's very exciting, and I'm really glad to see this being rolled out. I do have a sense of urgency around the climate crisis. We know from the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change that we have about 9 years to avoid climate catastrophe. And so what I see here is something actually quite conservative. I see, another year of rulemaking, a 2-year waiting period before implementation even begins. And we're talking about models in 2025 before this even comes into effect. And I know that, I have constituents up in Duluth who are, we're out of the Twin Cities, about 2.5, 3 hours drive from the Twin Cities. If we want to buy an electric vehicle or a zero emission or very low emission vehicle, we got to go down to the cities. And when we're talking about choice for consumers, you know, if I'm going to buy a car on a lot here in Duluth, I got a couple kids in tow, I got a spouse, we're trying to car shop or going around the lot. There's no electric vehicles to look at. So I really applaud this effort to bring more choice. And I do hope that some of those vehicles are going to make it onto the lots in outstate Minnesota and not just be concentrated in the Twin Cities. But one of the things that I would like to ask you specifically about, and I know this applies just to new cars, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So and nobody's making anybody buy a car that is an electric vehicle or a zero emissions vehicle, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to ask about the equity piece, because I think that's one part that has been taken into consideration in all of this that we haven't talked much about. It was briefly touched on in your presentation, which was great. Again, thank you for that. But I'm wondering if you can talk to us a little bit about the considerations around public health and also around the equity piece in terms of, we know that this is an environmental justice issue. We have populations in our state that have traditionally been victim disproportionately of our pollution that we produce in our state. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how that has come into play in this rulemaking and your thought process around this.
Yes. So, Mr. Chair and Senator McEwen, thank you for the questions and for your comments. We did do an equity analysis as part of the statement of need and reasonableness, and you can find that. I don't have the exact page reference for that, but yes, equity is a part of this. We know that while Minnesota meets federal air quality standards, it isn't everywhere in the state, and we see those communities, especially that are close to our highways, being very disproportionately impacted by poor air in Minnesota. And so this really does look to address those equity issues as well.
Thank you, Commissioner. I do have another. Oh, I'm sorry.
To that point, Mr. Chair, that point.
Go ahead, Madam Chair.
Just on the equity, I think we all know that the folks who can buy these electric vehicles are folks who have quite a bit of, shall we say, cash or income, and I think this harms the low-income communities the absolute most, and the minority communities the absolute most. And so I think when we talk about equity, we have to that's part of the equity and justice part too. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Senator Lang, and then we're going to move on.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening, Commissioner. I have a few questions, and I think it's been now probably 10, 11 months since we last spoke, when we were under much less lockdown over last year. So a couple of questions. You mentioned the exact number of vehicles that we're talking about that are being mandated to be electric and on the sales lots come 2025. And you said it depends on the manufacturers. Can you talk to me a little bit more about that? What does it depend on?
Yeah, I'll let Assistant Commissioner McDonald talk the specifics about what that looks like for manufacturer requirements.
Mr. Chair and Senator Lang, the requirements for the ZEV requirement, which is the zero emission vehicle standard, are based on the percentage of sales of vehicles in Minnesota, and they require vehicle manufacturers, and that's an important point, right? The vehicle manufacturers to deliver for sale an increasing number of credits, and credits are generated per electric vehicle or plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. And after model year 2025, they plateau. And depending on the sales, we estimate that to be between 6 and 7.5% of new vehicle sales.
What's the number? What does that number represent?
This.
I think we based it on 200,000 vehicles in the state, new vehicles. Is that right?
Okay.
Correct, Commissioner. It's based on our projection for new vehicle sales.
Right. So, I mean, I talked to the auto manufacturers. I asked, how many vehicles are sold annually in the state of Minnesota, because I didn't know. And I came up with, in 2019, there was 235,516 vehicles sold. They predict this year, with the COVID crisis and the economic hardship that we're going through, that there's 184,000 approximately going to be sold in 2020. Those numbers haven't come in as of this point, but when it comes to,
Is that new vehicles? I'm sorry.
New vehicles.
Okay.
That's what I was.
That you're referencing. Mm-hmm.
What's that?
I'm just sorry, Senator. I was just wondering about if that number was that they gave you was new vehicles, and
sure.
Certainly it's something are.
Sure. So my question is, when it comes to that, somewhere between, depending on how many vehicles they sell this year, let's say 7% of 200,000, because that's kind of an average between the 2 years. That puts us at 14,000 vehicles that is going to be mandated to be electric in the state of Minnesota in 2025, correct?
Correct.
Sure.
If my math is right. Do you think we're going to sell all those in 2025? Roughly speaking, do you think we'll sell all 14,000?
Commissioner?
Mr. Chair and members, I would say that some of these concerns and issues are opportunities for comment for the administrative law judge. But to that point, states who have adopted this have not seen issues with compliance and non-compliance. And also in our conversations with the automobile dealers, the automobile manufacturers, we heard the need for regulatory compliance, and our credit scheme does provide an initial allotment of 1 year of compliance credits that will allow the manufacturers to ramp up during that 2-year process and manage their inventory as they need.
Okay, so you don't know.
Well, I don't know if it's,
it's kind of a yes or no question, I guess.
Senator,
well,
part of it is we can't speculate on that, but we did do, the research under the analysis that based our decision on this rule. So, but that is something that we'd expect that the dealers would want to comment and bring forward to the ALJ.
So I guess the one last question.
And one follow-up.
If we sell 13,999, and you guys are very close to your guess when it comes to how many vehicles we're going to sell, and Ford has an electric, I don't even know, electric Focus sitting on the lot that they didn't sell. How does that credit work? What is that credit worth for that one vehicle? What does Ford have to pay because they didn't sell that vehicle?
Craig, do you want to take that?
Mr. McDonald.
Couldn't find my mute
McDonald, are you
button.
there?
Yes.
Oh, there you are.
Senator. So we have not done that analysis there. So I think, the comment would be a comment that we would recommend you submit to the Office of Administrative Hearings and an opportunity for there that we can respond to. And I think it's just important to note that, again, we think this rule is reasonable, and we have a regulatory flexibility component for vehicle manufacturers that will allow them to comply.
Well, thank you for the answer. And I guess that kind of highlights one of my concerns, as I don't have a problem with electric vehicles. In fact, I think they're probably going to be the wave of the future. What I do have an issue with is when the state tries to mandate something and doesn't even have an idea of what that one vehicle costs. This is something where an agency that's never regulated an industry of this kind, as far as I know, is attempting to regulate a large chunk of the Minnesota industry. And I really have an issue with that. We're not incentivizing the purchase of electric vehicles, we're mandating it. And that's a big problem for me, especially when I don't think we're going to sell nearly as many cars as what you hope to. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll stand by.
Thank you. Senator Herr, and then we're going to go to the next testifier. Senator Herr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I kind of missed the punchline and raised my hand when the equity issue was pointed out. And I think both senators that mentioned the subject equity, both of them are correct. And that's why it's really needed, because place matter where you live. And so this emission car is really needed for this time. I'm a person that involved in economic development at the same time, very concerned about our environment as well. And so I wonder what would be the greatest loss, let's say economic repercussion, let's say if we accept these car. I would see it as a win-win situation for us. One, low emission. Second, it will, save individual buyer money for the long run. But would there be economic repercussion? I don't see it. But Commissioner, do you see anything to that regard?
Mr. Chair and Senator, I think that again, these new vehicles that we're seeing, we do see the price points and other things that do have an economic advantage as well for the state. But Craig, in our analysis, what would you say about that? And then, of course, the health savings that balance out as well that we talked about.
Mr. McDonald.
Mr. Chair and Senator, we do see, a total net consumer benefit based on the cost savings that a consumer would see over the life of their vehicle. We see those avoided costs in the healthcare system, so that's a net benefit. And then we also see, climate benefits where a greenhouse gas emissions reduction anywhere benefit all of us everywhere. So that is a benefit that we notice as well. And so this is an opportunity for that win-win and also incentivizing consumer choice in the marketplace.
Okay.
Well, thank you for the answer. And I will say, even though there's economic challenge for some people, there's a loan program when you buy a car. People get loans. So if you're not mandated to buy, but when people choose to buy, you have that option. And the option to buy a low emission car is better. I just want to make that point. So thank you for the answer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you for all the answers. And we got to be mindful that this in fact is going into a administrative law judge. So we want to be careful. And I know you are, Commissioner, and staff.
Thank you.
What you say. And with that, if you can hang around, fine. If you can't, we certainly appreciate your time.
Thank you. I know that Greta is going to stay, I believe, to monitor, but we do need to pop over to the other public information session because at the end of that, there is a question session as well. Yeah. So thank you for the time, and I appreciate all of the questions, and I look forward to continued discussion.
Yep, we'll have further discussions. I'm sure you already know that. So thank you.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Rude, too.
Members, we're going to move into Isaac Orr from the Center of American Experiment and get a different point of view on this issue. I did hear him. We had him at our earlier meeting. Goodness, it's been almost a year and a half ago, I think, probably, or even less, maybe a little bit less than that. But I'll turn it over to him. Thank you and welcome to the committee. Just please identify yourself. And as quickly as you can go, we do go till, we don't want to run past our commitment here, our meeting. For questions. So welcome.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Mr. Chair and the committee, my name is Isaac Orr. I'm a policy fellow at Center of the American Experiment. So today I'm going to be talking about the high costs and small environmental benefits of the California car mandates.
Isaac Orr, are you there?
Yes. Yes, I am. Hello? Can you guys hear me? Okay, perfect. All right, sorry about that. It's classic.
I'm not hearing anything. Is anybody else hearing, or am I having a hard time?
Yes, I'm hearing it, Senator.
I can hear him.
I can also hear him.
Me too.
Mr. Chairman, your picture is frozen, so I think you're having some difficulties.
All right, perfect. Should I wait or should I continue? All right.
Maybe the vice chair could pick it up until Mr. Chairman can get back on.
Okay. I'm happy to do whatever. I'm sure this is all recorded, correct? So if the chairman wanted to catch up later. All right, I'm just gonna go. My name is Isaac Orr. I'm a policy fellow specializing in energy and environmental policy at Center of the American Experiment. Today, I'm going to be talking mostly about the environmental aspects of the California car mandates. I've also done a lot of work on the cost of them, whether they do actually increase cars that consumers want and cannot access in the state of Minnesota. But today I'm going to be focusing on the environmental aspects of it. So Center of the American Experiment is Minnesota's leading public policy organization. We specialize in energy and environmental research, obviously, education, labor, the economy, and taxes. We've been a leading opponent of these rules. We think that the costs do not justify the benefits, or the benefits don't justify the costs, rather. I authored the center's 27-page comments to the Pollution Control Agency, saying why the rules are expensive and unnecessary. For the short version, you can see our winter 2020 edition of Thinking Minnesota. We made it the cover story of our magazine. More than 8,000 people, Minnesotans, have signed a petition opposing these rules at nocacars.com. And if you want to learn more about this, you can tune into our webinar on January 28th at noon. That's on the center's website. So really, whenever we're talking about a regulation or a law, what we need to do is we need to say, what are the costs and what are the benefits? Because everything we do in life involves trade-offs, and there's no such thing as a free lunch. So do the costs outweigh the benefits? When we're looking at this, these rules would require every new car sold in Minnesota to meet California's fuel mileage standards and require the sale of electric vehicles. That's going to increase costs. MPCA says that, and the auto dealers say that. So we can agree on that aspect. But I would argue that every justification given for the rules by the administration has been flawed, and the supposed environmental benefits are too small to measure. So what are the costs? The Walz administration said that this is going to save consumers money by increasing the fuel efficiency of vehicles. The sonar that Senator Weber referenced earlier said it was going to cost about $1,140 per vehicle, but research from Colorado actually found that it would be more along the lines of $2,000 to $2,500 per vehicle. So at that cost, it's going to be a 14-year payback for model year 2022 cars, an 11-year payback for model 2025 cars. So the average car in Minnesota is less than 12 years old. So in many cases, these regulations will not pay for themselves. And the regulations would have a net cost of about $2 billion for Colorado. But there are a series of costs that are not included in the analysis that I won't get into today because this is mostly about the environment. So why do costs increase? Well, the cars are more expensive than non-LEV cars. Many electric cars are sold for a loss, and that's why manufacturers don't offer certain models in states that don't require it. So when you force these auto manufacturers to force cars that they lose money on, obviously they need to make money by raising the cost of other cars. And that's why you see these rules impact the cost of non-electric vehicles apart from the LEV standard. So it's just simple economics. If they're losing money in one aspect, they need to raise the price of other cars to make up for it. So what are the environmental benefits? The administration says that these regulations are necessary to fight climate change and to reduce traditional pollutants. And the thing about it is when they announced these rules in 2019, they overestimated the impact that the rules would have by 2030. And what is the impact on temperature for reducing these emissions? One of the things that we always talk about is climate change and the importance of reducing emissions in the goal of reducing temperatures, but none of these rules ever talk about the temperature change that we would, realize from reducing these emissions. And I think that that's a shortcoming. So unfortunately, these rules are going to have zero impact on future temperatures. The Walz administration said that they wanted to, implement these rules to make sure that there's still ice on the lake in January. However, the temperature impact is going to be too small to measure, which is why these two grumpy old men look so skeptical. So reduction in greenhouse gases, this is from the MPCA's Statement of Reasonableness and Need, the SONAR. It will reduce 1.4 million tons of CO2 by 2034, a total of 8.4 million tons through 2034 for the 10-year span. And now we're going to get into what does this do for global temperatures. We can estimate this by looking at the Obama administration's Clean Power Plan. It was widely considered to be that administration's most sweeping climate change regulation. It would have averted 730 million metric tons of CO2 every year and averted 0.19 degrees Celsius by 2100, which is already an amount that's too small to measure, even with the most scientific equipment or sophisticated scientific equipment. So reducing emissions by 1.4 million is 0.2% of 730 million. So we could reasonably expect these regulations to avert 0.00036 degrees C by 2100. So there's really no way to measure whether the regulations have been successful, and that's one of the most important things we need to be doing. And even if we scaled this up to look at the temperature impact of reducing Minnesota's emissions as a whole, if we took the entire state, it would only reduce about 0.004 degrees C by 2100. So I don't think that there's any way to argue that the benefits of reducing these emissions outweigh the costs that Minnesotans are going to be, bearing upfront in terms of larger upfront vehicle costs. And the thing about this is global emissions matter most. Greenhouse gases mix evenly in the atmosphere. And, we were talking about how reducing emissions in one place helps everyone, but rising emissions in another place hurts everybody. So we really need to acknowledge that there's no climate heaven or climate Passover for good states that reduce their emissions, and countries like China increase their emissions. We're going to feel that here in the United States. So Chinese coal consumption versus Minnesota coal consumption. You see, this is from the BP Statistical Review of Energy. China's been increasing their coal consumption by a lot. They have 1 billion people over there, and I think it's 200 million don't have access to electricity yet. So of course, they're going to be doing the things that are the most reliable and most affordable, and they're not going to care if their emissions rise. And their Paris Climate Accord pledge actually said that they would peak their emissions sometime around 2030. So they basically have a blank check to increase their emissions for the next 10 years. And we're worried about, 0.00036 degrees C. But when we're talking about traditional pollutants, it's going to have a very small impact on those as well. Air monitoring data from the governor's COVID shutdown shows that the reasonableness just isn't there. MPCA data show that the cars are not even the largest source of particulates in the state of Minnesota, and our air meets all federal standards. So this is from the MPCA's website, this graph. We're far below all the health-based standards for fine particulates, nitrogen dioxide, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide. Lead is a very regional, or I guess not regional, but location-specific pollutant. So we have two there, the North Minneapolis, I think that was the recycling factory, and Gopher Resources was like a battery recycling facility, and that's why those two have high readings there. But let's look at the air quality in Minnesota during the first shutdown. So March 27th through June 10th, we actually saw our air quality index from the US EPA monitoring showed that air quality was slightly worse during that shutdown, even though we're going to see that on average, traffic was 40% lower. So if removing 40% of the cars from the road in the Twin Cities metro area doesn't have a large, significant impact on the levels of pollution that we observe, then I don't think that we can argue that these rules are going to be able to produce that impact. So I think that data undermines the statement of need and reasonableness for these rules. If removing, I already said that. And I would argue that the MPCA kind of makes this argument in the slides. So when they're looking at the equity analysis, the clean cars benefits of reduced PM 2.5, we're talking about, less than a quarter of a microgram of, well, not quite less than a quarter of a microgram of PM 2.5 averted by these rules, even in the most areas that are impacted, and the statewide average is 0.1. So if we look at the before and after air quality impacts in, several Minnesota counties, the first bar here is the federal standard, and the light orange bar is the air quality after implementing these rules, assuming that every part of the state has the same reduction as the BIPOC areas that were 0.26 micrograms per cubic meter. And also the MPCA's website states that, neighborhood sources are the largest source of pollution. So that's dry cleaners, home heating, backyard fires, et cetera. So if the MPCA is wanting to, go about the lowest cost, least impactful way of reducing emissions, they would probably start with banning backyard fires first. One of the reasons why we have non-attainment in Minnesota for the last 3 years of air quality, maybe it was 2018, But there was like 3 days where we didn't have attainment of air quality standards. It was because of fires blowing smoke in from the Western United States and Canada. And also another thing that we really want to look at is indoor air quality is often worse than outdoor air quality. This is from the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, so NIOSH, and it looks at the sources of indoor air pollution. And the US EPA states that in the last several years, a growing body of scientific evidence has indicated that air within the home and other buildings can be more seriously polluted than the air even in the largest and most industrialized cities. So if we're going to be looking at the impacts of air quality on human health, it would probably make more sense to have air purifiers in homes because that's where people are going to be most exposed to poor air quality. So in conclusion, the cost of the California mandates will outweigh the benefits. They will make it more expensive for Minnesotans to purchase a vehicle, which I think has equity in impacts, because if you're going to make it more expensive to buy a new car, people are going to hold onto their cars longer. That's going to make it more difficult for people to purchase a used car on the secondary market. That means older, more polluting cars are going to be used more frequently in low-income areas. The California car mandates will produce immeasurably small reductions in future temperatures and traditional pollutants. And I would argue they're all pain and no gain. And then, they banned the sale of gas-powered vehicles in California to promote electric cars. And then they had a blackout because they didn't have enough electricity on the grid this summer. So I think that a lot of this is putting the cart before the horse. And I tend to agree that people that want electric vehicles, that's awesome, that's fine. But we don't need to mandate them. So thank you all for having me.
Thank you. Question from Senator Swazinski. Go ahead. Are you there?
Yeah,
Senator?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it. I have two comments from Mr. Orr, and I don't know if either really wants to reply to, but you said, I think 2 times, maybe 3 during your presentation that, quote unquote, you really can't argue. And I'm just so perplexed by your presentation because 97% of scientists say climate change is real. And throughout your presentation, you gave all this data and information saying it's not. So what would maybe you say to those 97% of scientists that disagree with you, that they shouldn't make that argument? And then the other thing I gotta tell you, sorry that I'm laughing, but comparing us with China and their abysmal climate record, I wished you would take time to compare us with Western Europe and the actions they're taking on climate change. China is still living in the Industrial Revolution, and I'd like to think we as a nation are ready to move way beyond the Industrial Revolution. But and on both fronts, I've really enjoyed both testifiers today. It's been a very enlightening evening. So thank you for that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And Mr. Orr, to respond.
Yes, thank you, Senator, Mr. Chair. I didn't say that climate change didn't exist. I used the Obama administration's numbers and extrapolated what the temperature impact would be. And I think that that's important to look at, right? I'm not saying that this is not going to make any difference on future global temperatures. I'm going to say it's not worth the cost, right? So the Obama administration put together a social cost of carbon, which attempted to quantify the amount of damage that would be inflicted on the economy for each ton of CO2 that was emitted into the atmosphere. I think that the costs of this regulation outweigh the social cost of carbon, and therefore it doesn't make sense to reduce the emission, right? So if the cost of reducing the emission exceeds the social cost of carbon, it doesn't pass a cost benefit analysis. And that's really what I'm saying. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to clarify that. And also when it comes to Europe, Germany is building a new coal plant. And one of the reasons they're doing that is because they are having problems balancing their grid. So what they end up doing is they generate a lot of wind and solar when wind and solar are available, and they export that to their neighboring countries. And then when the wind isn't blowing or the sun isn't shining, they import a lot of nuclear power from France. They use natural gas from the Nord Stream 2 pipeline that they're buying from Russia. And then they also have a lot of lignite there. So they burn the lignite coal in order to make sure the lights stay on. So I take your point that, maybe China is a developing country and they need to increase their emissions. And I think that's fine, right? But I do think that we also need to make sure that we're not, foisting unnecessary costs on our own people if we're also going to be dealing with the negative impacts of climate change that arise from China's increasing emissions. So, hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. Senator Torres Ray.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I just want to ask the presenter a question. I was very confused with his presentation about greenhouse emissions. It's really common knowledge that transportation contributes 28% of fossil fuel emission and electricity 27%. I think that has been adopted by science. The pie is very clear. That was available in 2018. This administration just ended, has not put the current numbers, but those numbers have gone up. And you said that residential gas emission is higher than transportation. I don't know if I misunderstood you, but
yeah, I could have. Sorry.
Could you elaborate on that? Because that is totally against the common wisdom and information we have about gas emissions. It's just incorrect. But maybe I misunderstood you.
Thank you, Senator, for the question. And Mr. Orr, if you'd answer that. And I also say that Senator, that's why we have these meetings. We have sometimes the difference of opinion with regards to global warming, and it's good to air, pardon the pun, I guess, good to air these kind of discussions out. So Mr. Orr, if you'd answer that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Senator Torres Ray. The pie chart that I showed the pollution of small particulate matter, nitrous oxides, and sulfur dioxides. It was not a greenhouse gas emissions. I had moved, maybe I wasn't clear. I had moved on to traditional pollutants like the National Ambient Air Quality Emissions Standards regulated pollutions. So the pollutants that have been traditionally regulated by EPA. So that was not a greenhouse gas emissions chart.
Thank you. Senator McEwen, I'm going to have a hard time here. McEwen? McEwen. Okay, now I got it. Thanks. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I just had a question, a couple of questions. One is a little bit sort of bigger picture, and one is more specific. I'm wondering if you think that we should be concerned about climate change.
Would you like me to answer that one in order, or would you like to answer all of your questions? I'm happy to do it either way.
I'm sorry. What was the question?
My first question is if Mr. Orr believes that we should be worried about climate change.
Oh, worried about climate change.
Yeah,
Mr.
and then
Orr.
I just have a kind of a technical follow-up.
Sure. Thank you, Senator McEwen and Mr. Chair. Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm younger than anyone else on the panel this afternoon or this evening. So if anybody's going to be dealing with the repercussions of this, it's going to be me. But I also understand that there are costs that go along to reducing our emissions, right? That's not a it's not a win-win situation necessarily. So if we can do things that make sense and reduce costs for consumers, like switch from coal to natural gas, and that cuts our emissions in half, I think that's great. And that's really what we should be looking for, win-win situations. If we can look at nuclear power in the future, I think that's incredibly important. It's the only dispatchable, always available source of carbon-free power that we have at our disposal besides large hydro. So we can look at solutions that are dependable and reliable, and I think that's great. I also think nuclear power is really the only source of power that will someday be cheaper than fossil fuels, because the amount of energy that you can have in a can of uranium, the amount of energy that you're going to use in your entire life for electricity generation, that amount of uranium can fit inside a Coke can. So the energy density of uranium is fascinating and it's very exciting. So I think that there are good ways to go about it, and there are ways that are where the costs exceed the benefits, and I want to make sure that we're doing these in a cost-effective way.
Senator, follow up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for answering my question, Mr. Orr. And my follow-up, I know that you're, that's interesting that you would talk about nuclear power, which is kind of a whole separate beast. But I am wondering if we will get a copy of the presentation that you had given us today, or if that is your sort of at the fracking guy proprietary material that you want to keep, or if we will get a copy of it.
Well, Senator, I know Mr. Orr fairly well, and I think he will be more than happy to give you the information. But I'm not going to answer for him. Go ahead.
Thank you, Senators. Glad to see you're aware of my Twitter presence, Senator McEwen. Yeah, absolutely. I will make sure that all of these things are not only available in the presentation, but I will go through and link to source material so you can click on the graphs and go to where I found the information. So give me a day to do that, and I can send you the slides now, but definitely want to make sure you have access to where I'm getting this information, because I want to be as transparent as possible.
Thank you. That would be great. Appreciate it.
Well, members, any other questions or comments before we shut the meeting down? Senator Rood?
Sorry, we're having quite the windstorm up here. We're gusting to about 35 miles an hour, so my internet is kind of intermittent. But no, just thank everybody and thank the presenters. I think we had a lot of really good information here today, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for co-hosting this with me. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And Mr. Orr, one more quick question. You said you had 8,000 signatures. Go through that one more time with me, and then I'll ask Greta Gauthier if the MPCA has done anything like that at all, gathered up support from the public for the rulemaking.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. We've had a lot of people who are very interested in this topic. When people, I mean, Americans love their cars, and we've had 8,000 people go to our website and send a letter to both Governor Walz and the commission saying, hey, we don't want these emissions, or sorry, we don't want these California car mandates to, you know, impact the types of cars that we will be able to potentially purchase in the future. So yeah, that's it. And if you all want to tune into our webinar on the 28th, happy to have you. Just thought I would plug that shamelessly. So appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, that was shameless. Ms. Gauthier, would you do you have any comments with regards to any public input or any signatures saying that we should be moving forward real fast with this rulemaking process?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Greta Gauthier, Assistant Commissioner, Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. What I can get for you is some of that information from the public meetings, 7 public meetings that we held around the state before COVID hit. We had a number of comments come in from there. But we also did a poll of Minnesotans. I do not have the poll results handy in front of me right now, but I can tell you that the top concern was people wanting more choice for electric vehicles because they are concerned about climate change. So I will get that and send it to the committee. And thank you for the question.
And thank you very much for that, Greta. And that's a survey that you sent out, or was it another interested party?
Mr. Chairman, I do not have the details about that at my fingertips, so I will get that for you. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. All right, members, if there's no other questions or concerns, this meeting stands adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.